Okay, Tony, this is just a Z-sphere, and I've just sculpted in this simple face thing. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't matter. And what I want to do is we want to create a shell or a mask for this piece. Now, there's a few different ways we can do it, for sure. So we can use retopology, and we can retopologize the face, or we can use, we're in Dynamesh, and we can do a shell in Dynamesh. So the first thing that you need to do is get the size, make sure your size is correct. So I'm going to do slider to subtool size, and I've got a y-axis, up axis of 100 millimeters, which is 10 centimeters. Okay, so I've got that. Now I can add a little helper cube that will be one. This is actually in millimeters, so it would be 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter. So let's create a 1 unit or 1 millimeter little cube to help us get the right shell thickness. So I'm going to create that now, and there it is. So let us now go and resize this cube that is 1 millimeter. So if I just press F on the keyboard to frame it, size it down, go to my transpose, measure across, you can see it's 1 millimeter, 0.99995. So if I come in here now, what I can do is I can do slider subtool size, make sure all's not checked because I'm just making an amendment to this cube. If I hit slider subtool size, you've got 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, got ratio on so they'll all change at the same time, 2 millimeters, so we go resize. So this is now a 2 millimeter cube. All right, so that will give me the thickness that I want. So it's a little helper cube. So I'm going to zoom out now, and we're going to go out of solo, and I'm just going to get my little helper cube and move it just to the top, just out the way for now. Okay, so I can use that as a guide for how thick my face is going to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two versions. So I'm going to use this as a Dynamesh shell, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new cube that's going to be a Boolean subtraction of this to create the shell, and this is what I need to do. So I'm going to take my helper cube, move it up to the top, and just for now I'm going to turn it off. So I'm going to go into here, and I'm just going to append in a simple 3D cube like this. I'm going to scale this down, and I can actually just put it at the back of the face because the face mask is following this line here. So I'm going to put this in subtractive mode, and I'm going to turn Boolean on, and that will sort of take this back away. Right, now when I merge this down to here, it will still keep that characteristics of the mesh, of the subtraction. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this because I want to show you a different method in a second. And go back to that. So there we go, got our subtraction turned on. Remember, I've just got it in subtractive mode. So when I merge this down onto this layer, what's going to happen, it's going to keep this subtractive mode. This is important. Remember that I'm also in Dynamesh here. Okay, so what I want to do is come here, go to merge, merge down, click OK. At the moment it looks like it's part of this, but if I press the Control and Shift, because I have Dynamesh still turned on, it will subtract it. Let me just demonstrate this to you. Control, drag, and there you go, it's subtracted. But it's just done a normal Boolean subtraction. So if I press Control Z, go back one, and in here, instead of creating, just dragging the Dynamesh to activate it, I'm going to say create shell. Now ZBrush will work, and it will create a shell based on this thickness value here. And there we have it. So we have that shell thickness that you can see running through the model here. However, it might be the wrong thickness. So this is where I need to use that little helper cube. So I'm going to make that active here, and I'm going to bring it down, and we're going to check it. So I'm going to put it against one of the edges like this, move it here, zoom in, and I need it a bit thicker because obviously it's too thin. So I'm going to jump back into our Dynamesh shell. I'm going to go back one to bring that cube back. Press F on the keyboard, and we're going to change that value in the Dynamesh shell settings. So in here, instead of 4, I'm going to enter in 6, and then I'm going to click Create Shell. Okay, so if we now look at this, you can see it's considerably thicker, but it's still not to the value that we need it to be. So I need to go back one, and I need to set this shell thickness at 8, and hit Create Shell, and it should be pretty much close to 2 millimeters. Now it'll create a shell on the inside that will be all over the mask at 2 millimeters, so you'll have a consistent size. From that point we can use the original mask, and we can actually boolean away the parts we don't need. Just as a little tip here, it might be a good idea to work with another mesh first to get the thickness value, a lower resolution piece of geometry, and then your actual shell creation will be quicker. You'll get the right size, and then you can apply it then. Just a little tip. Okay, so that's finished now, and if we look at this, you can see that this is now at 8, but it's 2 millimeters. So we have created a good mesh. Now you're going to see on the inside it's a little bit kind of faceted, but you could go into this piece, and because it's a separate mesh, you can come into here. Let me just turn line off, go back into draw. I could just select this inside and use something like the deformation smooth to kind of smooth it out. I could bring the mask back, and then I could re-Dynamesh. And you can go in here and you can smooth the inside out, just make it a bit cleaner. Now this mesh isn't the best in the world because I didn't clean up the edges, but this is basically that shell that we've created. So all we need to do now is boolean away part of this, and we should be good. And of course I can remove the eyes. So at this stage, now I've got my shell the correct side, I can bring up this poly shell. I'm going to duplicate this shell out, put it down here, and I'm going to call this the subtraction. Let's go to poly shell, bring this down, rename this, call it subtraction, hit enter. Okay, so now with this piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the parts that I actually want. So let me just turn this off. Let's mask what I don't want, which is round here. So of course I'm going round quite quickly just for the sake of this tutorial. Let's mask up this and this, and just go around the edge here. Round here, round here. I'll just alt click on here to harden it up. Come in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use scale, or actually just move and take this and bring it out. So notice I'm just pushing it straight out, straight up. This is to form my subtraction. Okay, then I'm going to invert it, and what I'm going to do with this part of the face is I'm just going to kind of push it in. So I'm pressing Alt key, I'm just kind of pushing this into the model, just so it doesn't interfere with the Boolean. And I can even smooth it out. Okay, that should give me a good subtraction. So if I now put this in subtractive mode and we turn it on, you're going to see that it's going to subtract from here away, giving me that 2 millimeters. Now obviously inside the mask is a little bit out, so I can come down to this and just use the move to kind of move some bits around. fact, what I'll probably do is go down and actually just reduce the Dynamesh and clean it up here. Oop. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a nice edge as opposed to anything else, so that it actually cuts away nicely. Okay, let's put that back, and we've got something like that. Then to get this mesh out, at the same time, by the way, you could boolean the eyes out, so I could go in and append something like a cylinder, rotate and scale that. Let's bring that down, let's rotate it this way, bring it down a bit, put it in where the eyes are, so where I want my cutouts for my eyes should be something like that. Yeah, then you can put that in subtractive mode and just play around with it. I'm pressing Ctrl D to increase the resolution. Make them a bit longer. They cut through. I can go to scale to Subtool Master, and I can mirror this on the x-axis into the same tool. Bang, that's appeared on the other side. There we go. We have our mask. Let's come down to the Boolean, make Boolean mesh. Obviously you do a bit of cleanup on this. This is just getting the shell. And there we have it. So now I'm just going to put these creation files into a folder. Close them up, and I'll append in the new Umesh, which is here, which has now got our 2mm gap. Obviously go around the top, you're going to notice it's all kind of Dynamesh together, it's all Boolean together, so you might very much want to take this back into Dynamesh and clean it up, which is no problem. Set this on about 256, hit the Dynamesh button. I'm losing resolution there, so I probably want to set it a bit higher. So that's now Dynamesh together, which means you can make sure that you've got symmetry turned on here. You can come around and clean the mesh up, knowing that you've got a shell of 2mm. So you go around the edge, just clean this up very quickly. And that is a 2mm shell round the outside created. So let me show you another method now. We go back to the original mesh here. Another very good method to use is to take this out of Dynamesh, and to, if we look at this, we've got one polygroup on this. Control W, make sure it's one polygroup. And what we're going to do is we're going to use masking to create a new polygroup. So I'm going to take this face, just go on the front for speed. Let me just mask most of this out. Just want to turn lazy mouse on with this. That's good. Okay. Okay, now you've got that masked. You can go to Polygroups and then Group Masked. This will give you two groups. So I'm going to press Control Shift on this part, and I'm going to, with the other area, because I've got no subdivision levels, I'm going to go to Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this little helper cube that we've got, which is here, and I'm going to put it into the location so I can see my shell. Now I can't see the back because I've only got one face, and if I come down to Display, Properties, turn on Double, I'm going to be able to see the face when I click back here. Okay, so that's my helper guide. So I'm back on this piece. I've got double turned on there so I can see the back. I'm now going to use another technique that I sort of found, which is to actually come down and use the geometry and to use edge loops and the panel loop function in here. And what we want to do is we're actually adding a panel loop to this piece of geometry. So what we need to do, because we don't want it to pull out and create a panel loop, we need to set this elevation to -100. Okay, now we also need to set the thickness to get it to be the right thickness. So I'm going to hit this up. We'll leave all this at default and click panel, and we've got this. It's not good enough. Control Z to go back. Let's take our thickness and make it a little bit thicker. That's pretty good. Yep, that's pretty much 2 millimeters. So there we go, we've created that. So you've created that on the inside, it hasn't destroyed that. So I'm happy with that. So what I suggest you could do then is you can boolean out the eyes the same way we did before. Let me just go and open this folder up, grab this, duplicate it, and bring it down outside of this onto here. Close this back up. Let me move these out of the way. Take this, move it down to the bottom, make it a boolean. Like this. And do the same thing. Make boolean mesh. Now once again you can take that into Dynamesh and you can clean up the inside. So let's go and append that back in. There he is there. That's the new one. I'll turn these ones off. So once again come back into here. Dynamesh, make sure it's high enough resolution. Click the Dynamesh button. Come in here, turn symmetry back on, clean that inside. By the way, it's a polygroup, so you could press Control Shift on here just to isolate the inside so that you're not affecting the outside of the model at all. And you can come along here, clean all this inside up, press Control Shift to move outside of that, and then of course clean up the edges where you need to. And when you're finished with that, you can just re-Dynamesh it. And that then gives you that mask as well. The inside at 2 millimeters as indicated by the cube. Yeah. So a couple of methods there for creating the face mask that you want to create really easily inside of ZBrush. No problem.